family.
And now back to the royal family. Are you suitably recovered?
I'm suitably
Good.
recovered.
Let's talk about Harry and Meghan, because it was confirmed yesterday, fantastic scoop in The Sun, that they were getting kicked out of Frogmore Cottage. Confirmed, I think, late yesterday afternoon by the Duke and Duchess of Netflix and their spokespeople that, in fact, it was true. They'd been asked to leave.
Yeah, and look, Piers, it happened from January onwards. So just when the book was coming out and the end of the Netflix documentary. So really what you're looking at is, in many ways, you might say, hell hath no fury like a king scorned.
Yes, quite deftly handled, though, by the king's people, because obviously at the time we were all saying, surely he's got to say something, surely he's got to do something, and others were saying, like yourself, I think, you know, they will keep quiet, they will stay stum, they won't say a word, but they've quietly just done something.
Well, indeed, and I think that's the way they've tried to approach the whole thing, because there's no point getting into a verbal slanging match and he said or who said what, and just leave, in many ways, Harry to hang out to dry. And, you know, and people have sort of got tired of what is his story, particularly in this country and to some extent in America. And actually, you can see what's going on here and not just look at the bigger picture and say, well, Harry and Meghan have gone to California. Do they need this house? Yes, they were here for the funeral. And security issues obviously is something, the reason why Harry says he needs this house. But in a way, when the king's trying to actually cut back the royal family and make it fit for purpose, in a way, having a house that is quite expensive, unoccupied, is not good for the optics. Because let's be honest, Harry and Meghan aren't going to be making Britain a regular port of call, and we don't even know what's happening regarding the coronation. They don't want to be here, it would seem. Well, certainly Meghan doesn't want to be here.
The latest on that surely is from him, isn't it? Saying he wants an apology, supposedly, before he comes. I mean, he's not going to get one of those, is he?
Well, I apologise for what, in many ways?
Yeah.
Because he's the one who's gone all there, and they're saying, well, we don't believe your side of the story. We're not sure what we've got to apologise for. And this is the problem for Harry. He wants everything, and he sees himself as the victim of all this. But actually, if you want to look at further, well, think about where the other side are feeling about this and their vulnerabilities in there, because they've been, you know, subject to scrutiny from a Harry's viewpoint, and you can believe it or not. That's up to anybody out there.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, they've said, right, we just need to get on with our job, and we've seen that with the Prince and Princess of Wales. The King is out there doing his job. It's obviously the build-up to the coronation, and the King is trying to sort of deal with his two problem areas, which is Meghan and Harry and Andrew, and they both are sort of always there and are the news dominating the news story. And what we should be looking at, and he would be hoping, is that we're building up to the coronation and the celebration of the start of his reign in a sort of official, once he is crowned.
Yes, because it's not that long ago or that we were saying, you know, will he be, you know, a great king? Will he get off to a good start? He did get off to a pretty good start.
Yes.
And it's sort of morphed into a relatively okay period so far, but you know, there's a few challenges. I mean, only this week he was in a bit of trouble, wasn't he, for meeting up with Ursula von der Leyen. Some people didn't think he should have done that. Well, some people thought that it was wrong. I didn't really have a problem with it, to be honest.
I don't have a problem with it, because it actually isn't she technically, whether you agree with the EU or not, and obviously she is in a position of authority there. She's in Windsor. The decisions and all the politics has been done behind the scenes, and it is quite normal for heads of, you know, important political people to meet the king. It's part of the sort of soft power, and maybe it's part of the attraction of, maybe she thought, well, we need to get this done, Britain are important, and maybe that's part of the symbolism. The king, yes, said that, has he stepped too far? Well, he hasn't made no pronouncements about it. He just shook her hand. That's all we've really seen. What was actually said, we have no idea, when they were having their cup of tea in Windsor Castle.
And the Queen used to meet quite a lot of people who you might have described loosely as kind of, you know, unelected dictators, monsters, you know, characters perhaps who might have had some policies domestically in their own countries that we wouldn't have agreed with, but yet she would still meet them.
Wasn't the first state visit in this country from South Africa, and let's be honest, it's not a bed of roses politically there for the president in South Africa. So, but in many ways, that visit was about trying to, and as we've seen politically, we've seen Russia and China courting South Africa. It was probably quite important in many ways that we do make sure we're seen to be relevant. So it's quite hard, a dancing act for the king, that he's got to get used to how he does it in a very sensible way. But a lot of this doesn't come from him. That might have been a Foreign Office decision or a government decision to say a state visit for the President of South Africa. And again, we don't know who extended the invitation to earlier this week to Ursula.
There was a kind of conflict of stories going on, wasn't there? Because at one point, I think the King's people said it was Downing Street that asked him to do it. Downing Street denied that. But, I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure I believe either one of them.
Well, let's be honest. They met. It's irrelevant. Somewhere, somehow, that happened. And as far as I'm concerned, that's gone, because obviously the next day we get the Frogsit.
Yeah.
So...
exactly. And what about the invitations for the actual coronation itself? Because will it be... I know they're saying it's going to be sort of dialed down a bit and, the kids are going to be taking part, blah-de-blah. But what about the actual invitations to heads of state? Because it's a bit difficult to make it low-key if you're inviting, like, a couple of hundred people from around the world.
Well, that's why you have the gap, but from the funeral to the coronation.
Right.
And actually, a lot of people saying, well, this is quite a short turnaround for that very reason. And then you've got to work out if you're dialing it back. So where do you do the cut-off point of your heads of states? Now, we know at the funeral, a raft came all over the world. But then you probably think, well, everyone who's a member of the Commonwealth, their head of state or representative would be expected to be there. Plus, obviously, how do you deal with
the ones that don't want him to be their king anymore?
Well, you probably would be that's up to them, but they would be extending an invitation, and they are technically still part of... You can be part of the Commonwealth, but you may not be part of, being governed directly.
Yes.
If someone like, South Africa is a case in point.
But there again, I mean, I know this is probably minute detail that you wouldn't need to get into, but presumably you'd have to give a bit more priority to those who still want you as the monarch, other than the sort of second tier who now don't.
Well,
don't?
Well,
I would.
But I think if we're from a British point,
you can go over there. You lot.
Well, from a British point of view, the Commonwealth is quite important in a post-Brexit era. So whatever way they want. Well, look at Australia; they may want to go. New Zealand, but they still are going to be important trading partners. So again, there's all the optics. This coronation isn't, not just thrown together, because there are the sort of wider state implications of the occasion, and that is all that has to be worked out. So the final guest list will be very interesting, and that, of course, obviously comes back to whether it's a Harry and Meghan show or there's a no show. What do you do with the problem that is Andrew? Right. Where do you put him in the seating plan? Who's doing? It's not just a simple dinner party that they're doing the seating plan for.
No, it really isn't. And what about your thoughts on Harry and Meghan? See, I don't think they'll both come at all. I think, if anything, he'll come on his own.
I think that's where it might be heading, because then they can conveniently hide behind the fact that it's Archie's 4th birthday party. But actually, it's quite clear that they're not enamoured. They're not enamoured of the institution, and Meghan feels that, perhaps she's been ostracised and she's very much the victim. So
well, of course,
it would be hypocritical.
Although that particular narrative is now kind of wearing a bit thin in America, isn't it, by the looks of it? Particularly if you see what South Park did to them. They didn't hold back there, but I think it's the other elements of it, the sort of endlessly feeling the victimhood side. And I forget the South Park. I think it's the other bit. Now, the book may have sold squillions, and he's going to be doing a Q&A. A webinar. You can ask him a question if you want.
Well, I've got
19 quid.
Well,
I'm not sure. That? I think it might be worth it.
I'm not sure what I want to ask him.
Really? You can't think of anything?
Well, I think...
I can think of a few things to ask him.
Yeah, but I think if you want to ask him, I'm not sure you'll get past the people who are vetting the questions.
I'll have to have an assumed identity. See, somebody said to me that this is actually a rather clever way of dumping some more books, because you get a free book for your 19 quid, which will presumably count as a sale, right? So whoever is actually, getting a question for 19 quid, I don't know whether for 19 quid you get a guarantee of a question, or whether you just go into a pool and he may or may not get to you. What's he going to do next? I mean, cameo?
Well,
35 quid a pop. Happy birthday from the Prince of Fools.
Well, I think the publishers have run this, so that's why it's, again, just to keep the interest going. But if there's going to be more victimhood from him, but, you wanting to be asked questions like, you know, what do you think of the fact that you've been asked to leave Frogmore Cottage? Would be a starting point. And let's hear your side, rather of it come through, because you seem to be happy to be talking about everything else. So presumably you have an opinion about this.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, are you going to the coronation would be one question.
Well, I haven't been invited yet, Mike.
No, not you. I mean him.
Well, I think...
Well, you'll be standing outside it, presumably.
Well, to be confirmed, but I may possibly. But that will be probably one of the... Well, if they allow that question to be put out there.
What do you wear to a coronation? Is it a top hat and tails job?
Probably top hat and tails.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's like going... Well, it's like going to a wedding. I'm not sure it'd be what, depending on where, it would be military dress if you're in the army, or there will be state or national dress for some.
What's that for you then? You go as a Morris dancer.
Well, there is a Morris dancer in my local village, but I haven't joined.
There's also an idiot.
I haven't joined. Well, Morris Dance Organisation. I haven't joined them.
Right.
But I won't be with bells round my ankles outside Westminster Abbey.
Oh, very good. Well, we look forward to it. I'm sure we'll speak to you before then. Very good to see you, Rupert Bell. Thank you very much indeed.